Yeah. Let's say this is the real version of it. But this is still how many? Hundreds of years after Christ. Thousands of years after Moses. Do you have a mechanism to ensure that message is still the same from Moses, for example?
It's powerful to preserve His word.
But we know people, as you said, from your own testimony, they got corrupted.
There were versions that they were not corrupted, but and the New Testament, they all been preserved by these people who were real Christian and were persecuted. They were not the one who persecute anyone, and they were one to hide because during the Inquisition they persecute real Christians. Yeah,
But do you know something? Scholarship or scholars, knowledgeable people, experts in the Bible, they would say we need a manuscript of the Bible which is very closer to the event. The earliest, the better. The quality of the manuscript becomes better if it's closer to the event. If I give you a manuscript written yesterday about the Bible, and if I give you a manuscript 1,000 years ago, you would say the manuscript which is 1,000 years ago is more worthy of being...
The problem is that everybody was reading them because the word of God was very important. They were using them. So that's why...
No, Bible was never in the hands of the people.
Yes, it was in the beginning, and the people, the real Christian, they had a real manuscript of the Bible, and they hidden on the Alps.
But there's one thing missing in this equation, though. In the historical reality, the Bible was never in the hands of common people. The manuscripts were only on those people who are able to afford writing and copying a manuscript. Only few people had it. So that means the common people was on the mercy of the clergy, of priests and so on, to tell them what the Bible is.
That's why there were two types of people.
Bible was never...
There were the priests that they were merchants, they were doing it for money, and they were full Christian, and they persecute anybody who didn't agree to their money-making machine. And they were the real Christian that they didn't do the work for money, they were willing to die to translate the Bible and write on manuscripts, and they were persecuted during the Inquisition, and those people have kept the word of God faithful. They made sad copies because they had a fear of God.
Why are the copies still different if they tried all their best?
They are not different from
They are.
They are.
If you compare, you
Antioch,
see,
they are all the same.
no. If you compare the Alexandrine tradition and the Byzantine tradition of the manuscripts, there are two main traditions.
Because in Alexandria, the Bible says that nothing good is come from Alexandria. The Bible mentions Alexandria as a place of sin.
But what I'm saying is, when we...
they were corrupted.
I take what you're saying, but I'm saying, if you examine those manuscripts that come from Antioch, if you examine the manuscripts, how they are copied, they still contain so much differences between the manuscripts. That's the problem the scholars are having. That is why the scholarship is such that they're saying, because of all these differences, and they're very late manuscripts, we need to go back to the earlier manuscripts. The earlier, the better.
William Tyndale, he died. Yeah, he died in the stake. He was burned with fire.
Yeah, but that was much later. William Tyndale is like...
It's very like in the, what, 17th century or something? I can't remember. Very late.
He did it with the fear of God, yeah? He really loved God, and he did it with fear. He has chosen the very best manuscript that he could find. So he did the best he could.
That he could find.
And I believe in the power of God to preserve his word. I believe that during the ages there were faithful Christians that preserved the word.
That's fine to believe. That's fine to believe, but the reality is different. The reality is...
What do you think is the earliest manuscript of the Gospels?
Well, when you have a Bible, you use it, it get old, so you have to make a sad copy.
No, give me an idea of what you know is the earliest manuscript of the Bible, of the New Testament, for example.
I believe that God preserved the word through Valdesan and people who really had a fear of God.
So the first century, there is 0 manuscripts.
The sad copy done by the faithful Christians.
No, I'm saying for the first century, there's 0 manuscripts. So you can never go back to the first century to find the originals because they don't exist. So what you have to rely on is fragments from the 2nd century, then 3rd century have a bit more. And they say the majority of them are like after the 8th century. You know Dr. Bart Ehrman? He's actually an expert on the New Testament
The Christians
just 1
were
minute.
under heavy persecution, so they had to hide and keep writing the manuscript, but they did a good job.
So
They
Dr.
preserved
Bartolman, who is actually an expert of the New Testament manuscripts, he says that there are as many variants, as many differences in the different copies of the manuscripts, even the late ones, as there are number of words in the New Testament. Now, even if you have, like say, 50,000 manuscripts, the problem is if you have so many differences in them that they contradict each other even, then how can we rely on them? The credibility of these manuscripts really suffers badly.
I mean, you have to have faith that God is faithful and powerful to preserve His word. God is the Almighty God. He will have people who were faithful, who love God, and who did it just for the love of God to always had copies. Yeah, and He preserved them.
How does that help with the fact that the manuscripts are not there?
Well, I
When you have faith, for example, you can have faith, and you can have faith in someone who told you something wrong, and you all your life you'll believe that is the truth. That's not really the way to actually, believe in something, especially when your eternity depends on it.
Yeah, my experience, my conscience and testimony that what I have is what God wants me to do.
If I have an experience that Islam is true, does it make it true?
Well, I just say, it's a bit late and we need to go
Yeah,
home.
Sure. It's a pleasure speaking to you, but do think about and ponder on what I've said and read the Qur'an, because the Qur'an speaks to you. Doesn't it? The Qur'an
Would
doesn't
you like a
address...
free copy of the Quran?
No,
Quran doesn't address the Muslims. The Quran
have
addresses
some.
human beings. The Quran addresses Jews and Christians. So it does address you. So it's worth finding out what the Quran says about you, because it's directly addressing you. So do read, and perhaps next time when we see again, we can talk about it, and you can tell me about your experience.
The same in all religions.
I don't want to read the Quran. So they're real Christians in their best.
But think about it. If 1/4 of the world's population believe in the book called the Quran, it is indeed important to know what this Quran is about. If 1/4 of the world's population believes in the Quran, it's not Harry Potter. We're talking about 1/4 of the world population believe in this book. So we need to put some time aside to read about it.
Well, lots of people are Catholics, so some of them are really Catholic books.
As I said, I've given you reasons why you should think about the Quran, because the Quran corrects the misinformations and embellishments and corruption in the Bible, and you will see the truth yourself when you read it. So take some time out of it. Because in the day of judgment, you don't want to be in a position in which when God asks you, why did you not read the Quran in which I gave you the guidance and you said I didn't have time for it? Don't be in that position. Don't be in that position.
All right, thanks.
Take care. Take care. Okay? Safe journey home.
Remember that the Bible says that you can only get saved through Christ. He's the door, He's the way, He's the only way, and there is no other name on heaven, on earth.
Also remember that Jesus only worshipped one person, the Father only, not the Trinity. So follow Jesus Christ.
He's the only way to heaven. Yeah.
The only way to God is through worshipping God, not worshipping Christ.
Thank you very
Take care. Can I give all of this back? This more?
Is it a home time, yeah? It's a home time for everyone.
Any more?
So everyone's home time, yeah. Home time.
This is ours.
Oh, this is yours.
Look at him. Is this flashing because the battery is weak or something? Yeah. Okay. I actually had one of these lights. I didn't remember about the beginning, but you had lights.
Remember to bring it because now it's winter, isn't it? Winter.
Yeah. So maybe I should give it to you.
Okay, where's the man with the... One second, I can do it.
Maybe I should give you the lights.
I knew. Don't worry, that... No, it's not gone. Bro, I knew it. You see the UV? The UV got damaged. No, only the UV. No, put it out.